Hey everyone, welcome. Hi Jackie, nice to see you
Hi,
here.
excited to
I
be
am,
here.
yeah, I'm super excited that you're here. This is a topic that we're going to dive into, a topic that our yoga teachers ask about a lot: confidence as a yoga teacher. Really, any stage of the game, I hear from yoga teachers. Before we dive into that, I'd love for people to type in the comments if you're here watching live or here for the replay. And I also want to give a big shout out to our sponsor, Offering Tree. I will bring up a little coupon code if you decide to check out Offering Tree. We have a discount code. It's offeringtree.com/Shannon. And I want to tell everyone I was just using Offering Tree last week, and I'm really impressed with how easily I could put together a workshop, get it all online, have payments go through there, have the Zoom link all integrated. It worked really smoothly. So if you're looking for something like that, definitely check them out. Um, all right. So I see a few people are popping in here live. Let us know in the comments where you are, what's it like where you are, and we'll dive right in. So Jackie, tell our listeners, what is the work that you do and who do you do it for?
Yes, okay. I teach something called empowerment self-defense. It is a method that I teach mainly to women and teenage girls that helps them to not only be able to defend themselves, but also assert themselves in any kind of situation where they might feel uncomfortable or unsure, and just be able to walk through the world feeling safer and more confident.
That's amazing. This is a question that comes up all the time from yoga teachers. How can I get more confidence? So I'm really glad that we're here. And those who are here live, if you have questions, this is the time to ask them. Jane says, here for the live. I love all your podcasts. Renee recommended I attend. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're here, Jane. And shout out to Renee for suggesting it. And Amy Hogan is here. Hi from hot, humid Toronto. Yes, it's very hot here in Ontario where we are. Tell us, and here's Cindy from Massachusetts, also hot. Jackie, where are you based and what's the weather like where you are?
I'm in Israel and it's hot and humid here too. Same.
So tell us, how can is confidence something that we are like born with, or can we work on this? Like, where do we get confidence?
I mean, I think that it's definitely not something we're born with. I think it's something that we develop, and definitely our parents aid in that with encouraging and positive reinforcement and honesty and things like that. And it comes from setting goals and achieving them is one of the main things it comes from. But I think that, as far as when it comes to teaching and like putting yourself out there in front of a classroom, and knowing that what you're giving over to your students or whoever is the right and best thing for them, that really comes a lot from just doing it again and again and again and again. And I know some of you are gonna like not like that answer so much, but it really is true. Just doing it again and again and again. That's
That's
part of it.
so helpful. That's so helpful. And so, can you think back to like, how did you gain your confidence as a teacher? And I know that you also empower and teach people how to be confident. So, if you can think back to your own journey or some people who you've worked with, what helped you along the way other than like showing up and just doing it over and over again when we're teaching to a yoga class?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, nowadays, after you complete the certification for empowerment self-defense, you do 100 or so hours of following around an instructor, a seasoned instructor, and just watching her and like helping her in every class. But 11 years ago, after I was certified, they just threw you right in the water, like right in the water. P.S. Hebrew is not my mother tongue. I'm an immigrant. And so for me to even be able to build the courage to teach my first class, I mean, I remember seeing my colleagues who passed the certification with me, like posting about how they're class planning and all this. I was like, how do they have the courage to just go do it? Like, where does that even come from? And I don't know what it was, but eventually I built up the courage to teach my first class. I did it with this other woman, and we drove out into like the middle of nowhere to this tiny town to teach Israeli teenagers. And like, Israel, you gotta know, like, it's very high tech, it's very modern. It's also the Middle East. Like, there are windy roads with no street lights. Like, you don't know where you are. It's crazy. And we had to drive out there and teach these Israeli teenage girls who are kind of all over the place. And, you know, by the after the second class, she was like, okay, like, I'm not coming back with you. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I was shaking literally in my boots to show up for these girls. And somehow I got through that and did it, and it was okay. It was not my greatest success. It was my first ever class. It was okay. I taught, there's a couple of other classes I taught after that were complete flops, like was not able to connect with people at all. And the organization I worked for just kept giving me more and more chances. And what drove me to keep trying really was my passion to know that even if I get one thing through to one girl that maybe makes her a little bit safer down the road, like, it was all worth it for me. And so that's something that I think, you know, yoga teachers could definitely take from, because the mission of yoga to connect mind, body, spirit is so powerful. And when you keep that in your heart, the details kind of don't matter as much. But as far as, you know, the way I teach women confidence, we do a lot of stuff with the voice. That has proven for women to really boost our confidence. We do a lot of saying what we want out loud, unapologetically, and practicing that in a safe space. Because usually when women and girls are being called to do this, it's not a safe space. Like, they're being tested or they're not feeling safe. And that's why they feel the need, or boundaries being crossed, right? And so what I provide for women and girls is a safe place to practice this, where they're actually going to be encouraged and cheered on to do this, even though it's quote unquote rude. Not quote unquote, sometimes it is rude. Like, sometimes you do need to be rude, right? And then because they had that safe space to practice it, and they've already started making those neural pathways in their brains, it's so much easier for them to be able to do that in the real world. And so part of it is just opening up the voice for women. I've seen in general is a really great way to build your confidence, because what we say matters is a huge thing, you know, like what our opinions matter, our beliefs matter, what we feel matters, our emotions matter, and expressing that just gives you such a sense of self that we aren't really taught how to discover. And then practicing in a safe space, like, I don't know, practicing in the mirror even is something that you could do. Practicing, like, get into your imagination and pretend that you're giving like the most awesome yoga class ever, even though there's no one there. Like, get your brain used to how you want to be able to show up.
This is fantastic. I love how you use this analogy of like really using your voice, and how you spoke about how this is really important for women to practice. We're all about like making things gender neutral around here. And I want to say that I was just listening to a podcast this morning where I was learning about the Boston Marathon and the first woman to run in the Boston Marathon. And that was in 1966. So not very long ago, really, relatively, women were not allowed to run in the Boston Marathon. It was thought that
Yeah.
women would be harmed. So women have been, um, told that you can't do this, you can't say that for a while. And I love how you use this exercise. So I'm wondering if there's a group of yoga teachers that, like you said, that we could practice this in the mirror. Can you think of what we need to, like, do we practice just asking for what we need in general? Can you give me an example of this vocalization? Because I feel like I maybe don't get it.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Um, so it's about practicing when you do feel safe, right, in the mirror. So like any situation where you feel like, and you can bring up ones from your past too. Like let's say someone was in the grocery store, was like really in your space, and you wanted to say something and it was really uncomfortable for you, and it was just stuck in your throat, or you just didn't do it, or for whatever reason. You could bring that scenario. The brain doesn't really know the difference so much between pretend and real when you're in these things. So imagine you're back there and then say what you actually wanted to say. Hey, could you give me some space? Thank you. And just say that and see how, like, try that on, see how it feels. But yeah, like, and then it's searching out any situation in life where you could practice this, right? So like I spoke to a woman um, who was at the grocery store, and she was, trying to go up to pay for her items. And there were some people, I guess, like looking at something that were in her way. And instead of saying, excuse me, she went all the way around, like the other side of the store, which, like, fine, like you can do that. That's fine. If that's what you feel comfortable with, that's great. Like if you're making that empowered choice. But if you're trying to practice this using your voice skill, even though it's scary, sometimes just, hey, excuse me, can I please get by?
This is
And
so
like those
good.
little things, like search out the little things. Ooh, this is a great opportunity for me to practice using my voice, and get excited. And then pat
Okay.
yourself on the back after.
Right. Oh, this is so good. So then also we can practice and imagine that there's like a room full of people that we're teaching to as a yoga teacher, is what I heard you say. I'm wondering, for anyone who's here live or watching the replay, when do you feel this, this self-doubt or this nervousness or imposter syndrome show up? And I want to say something and find out what you think, Jackie, about this. A lot of the time I hear yoga teachers say, well, I'm a yoga teacher who teaches this one specific thing, let's say restorative yoga, or, yoga for people with back pain. But then I see all of these other people teaching the same thing. So I feel like I can't then show up, to teach those things. Like, who am I to teach this? That imposter syndrome kind of kicks in and we start comparing to other people. Do you have any ideas around that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because what really sunk this in for me was an episode of Steph Crowder's podcast. I don't remember which one, but she's our mutual coach. She's amazing. And she had on this woman who makes hair bows. And she has created a really successful business making hair bows that are quite pricey. You could find the same thing at Target for like a quarter of the price. But because this person shows up authentically as herself for her community, people keep buying from her. And because she shows that she cares about their little girls, like genuinely cares, people keep buying from her. And so, yoga is such a saturated field, and I get that. I was a fitness instructor, same deal, right? Like, thought I was going to be the only really body positive fitness instructor out there, and then that blew up, right? And I was like, oh, well, now what am I going to do? But you got to know that your you is what people come back for. the uniqueness that is just, oh, that only you have. That's what the people are coming back for. And so when you are showing up as authentically as possible and you show that you care about your people and your community and you genuinely care, they're going to come back to you, not to anyone else.
This is so true. I remember, also a shout out to Steph Crowder, because that's how we met.
Yes. Yes.
Her podcast is amazing. It's called Courage and Clarity. If you are interested in going to have a listen to that. And I remember this episode with the hair bow. And I also want to add, like, when I started this podcast, I remember thinking, like, I have this idea. I want to support yoga teachers. And then I went online and looked, and I thought I had this original idea and it didn't exist before. That's not true at all.
Right.
I found multiple podcasts with other people helping yoga teachers, and that doesn't make their podcast less or mine less. It really is, you need to find that connection. So I think what you said is so true. Yoga teachers are that unique ingredient. What about then when we're not feeling comfortable or positive in our body? Because another thing that I hear from yoga teachers a lot is, well, I would show up on video if I looked different. I would show up on video if I wasn't so old, or if I was more flexible, or I don't want to post that picture of myself until I can look this way. What would you say to that?
That's such a good question. And I think that is deep, because that has to do with body image, and body image is something that we really need to go deep on and heal in order for us to really be able to, like, post confident pictures. Listen, like, I could tell you, just post it anyway. Like, just push yourself to do it. Just force yourself to do it. Right. But because I care about body positivity so much, I would also urge you to think about what's behind that. Where did you pick up those messages that your body isn't good enough? Where does that come from? And explore that and feel through the pain of not being enough, and then anchor into a more positive truth. You are enough. You are more than enough, exactly how you are. You are worthy of being seen. You are worthy of being heard. And it's kind of also like, what is it worth to you to be able to get more yoga out to? There are people out there who really need it, And so if you feel deeply and you're passionate about your mission and you keep that at the forefront, then that kind of trumps all, right? Like, it's bigger than you.
I agree.
So it's bigger than you, and also go heal your body image stuff. Like, it's so
right.
important. It's so important.
I wonder if anyone has suggestions around what has helped you with body image, because I know a lot of our yoga teachers work in this space as well. And I could see how this would then ripple out and impact the people around you in your community. I'm thinking of children as well, and how they kind of take that in if we haven't healed that, or our yoga students will see us modeling this. What about the, like,
100%.
That Superman pose or something? Is there anything that we can do with our body to build that confidence before we go do something?
Oh yeah. I used to every time before I went to go teach a whole room of people, especially if it was going to be like a big room of people, I would go into the mirror and I would stand like this, like chest puffed, for a good 30 seconds. I did it in the mall, in the bathroom even. People were like, what? And oh my gosh, does that work? Oh my gosh, does that work?
I love it. I hope that
helps.
Everyone who's here live, like, tries it out.
Stand up, like, take up space. Star pose in yoga is really good for that. Take up space. Own it. It's your space. You deserve to be heard and seen, and put yourself out there. But also
This
the
is
Superman one is really good.
right. I think this is a great gift that we can do with our students. When you said star pose, if we just
Yeah.
practice taking up space, um, and then the balance of like practice, how closed in can you get, and then the difference. I think that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. I've seen women, just from doing things like that with them, like star pose for a good 30 seconds, them say like, you know what, I'm ready to take up more space. I'm going to schedule in workouts into my day, and I'm going to ask my husband to support me, even though we have kids, like things like that. Like it really, really is effective. It's kind of magical.
That is magical. Ooh, that's exciting. I wonder if there's anything else from our yoga teachers who are watching. Are there poses that you find, like the warrior? I'm thinking of warriors, where you feel like your confidence really boosts, or you focus on that theme with your students. Also, if you're here live and you have questions, or if you're here for the replay and you have questions, ask away in the comments here. What I also want to touch on, because you talked about your big why, and I've been so focused on this lately. I'm putting a podcast together actually today after we do this, that's all about that big why. You talked about how, that really is the forefront when you think about the impact that you're having with the women and the girls that you're working with. Is there anything that you do that reminds you of that when you have those moments of like, oh gosh, I have to go talk to this huge room of people, or be on this live and talk about? Is there anything that really helps you in that moment?
It's not really something I do. It's kind of just when you're living your purpose, it's kind of always there. It's kind of always there. I get, this is not something I do, but but I do get a lot of phone calls. This happened to me, or this happened to my daughter, or I see stories in the news. And for me, that is just enough for me to see, oh, there's still work to be done. There's still work to be done. There's still work to be done. And so those things that trigger us, use them, to drive you forward. Some of the things that trigger us the most are the things that we are here to do. Like that's our path. We're here to fix that part of the world in some way, shape, or form. So use them. But I do, always just think about like, I don't think about the whole room. I think about that one person. If I can reach one person today and help her be safer, it's all worth it to me. It's all worth it to me. There's a saying in Judaism that says that every single person is the whole world. And if you can save one person, it's like you've saved the whole world. And so that's something that I carry around with me.
That's amazing. And I love this thought of not thinking about the whole room, of thinking of that one person. Yoga teachers could easily do this. If you could teach one person one movement or breath practice that would help them to, let's say, downregulate their nervous system, or help them feel like they can move with more ease and more comfort, that's a big deal. That makes a huge difference in someone's life. So I
Yes.
love this, focusing on one thing.
Yes. And I mean, they used to throw me into these schools, the public Middle Eastern schools, where the teachers, as much as I would talk to them beforehand and be like, let's team up to make this the best for these kids. Like, here's what I need from you. Please be an active, whatever. Please be an active participant. They would still leave the room, like see it as, oh, I can use this as a coffee break, and leave the room with me and 30 other girls. And like, I'd have the whole classroom going crazy. But then I'd maybe have 4 or 5 girls that really wanted to learn. So I'd just take those ones into a corner and be like, hey, let's learn this. And like, they were often more the nerdy ones who didn't follow along with things anyway, right? But like, I left there feeling like, okay, it wasn't the most successful class. I didn't capture the audience, but maybe I helped those 4 girls. And that's all worth it to me.
Oh, that's so powerful. And as someone who like got asked to teach in high schools and colleges, high schools and colleges were and a little bit of toddler and me yoga, but there were parents there. I know like that moment of chaos where you just think, oh gosh, I think it's going off the rails here, but you're right. You still make your impact.
Yeah.
Jane was saying warriors for sure for confidence. I wonder if we can think of some other ones, and what a great idea to also do these yourself before. One thing that I know really helped me when I was starting out as a teacher is I would do one of the things that you said. I would teach like I was teaching a whole group of people. I would record my voice, then I would play it back and I would do the class as the student. And that helped me before I got in front of a class of people. And I just want to ask you, like, do you think we ever get to the point where we just don't have that, where we just 100% feel confident and we don't ever have that nervousness or self-doubt?
Sadly, no. I don't think it ever goes completely away. Like, am I going to tell you I didn't have jitters before this interview? Like, no, of course I did. And I've done a bunch of these. I always have some jitters before I teach. Always. It doesn't really ever go away. But again, it's just like, well, I know why I'm doing this. So I'm going to show up, I'm going to show up. I will say that it does get way easier. Like it does get way less. I said like in the beginning, I was shaking. And I think I remember there was one time, probably after about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years of teaching, I showed up to another random city in Israel, and I just didn't have the jitters. But also that group I was going to be teaching in English. So after having taught in Hebrew, not my mother tongue, for so long, and also because of all those crazy situations like the one I mentioned in the schools, and even crazier than that, it was like, well, nothing can be worse than that, right? And these are like college-aged English-speaking women, like this is a breeze, right? So I do remember times where it didn't happen. But it's because of those crazy times when it was insane and it was kind of like, oh, like if I can do that, I can do anything.
That's so good. A lot of our yoga teacher listeners do teach in another language and do talk about that with regards to confidence, how teaching in a different language than what your mother tongue really changes things. Is there anything that helped you to be able to teach in Hebrew?
Yes. One was asking, like, how do you say that? Like asking the room. And the room loves to chime in, like, oh, this is how you say that. Like they love to help you. It makes them feel more confident and empowered. So like if you can't think of a word, just ask. How do I say this word? Can you help me think of the word that I'm thinking of? And then what else? Knowing that you're probably going to fumble, you're probably going to make mistakes, and that it's okay because you're lovable with your cute mistakes. And just kind of like trust that the room is going to see you that way. And when you trust that the room is going to see you that way, they do see you that way. That's kind of how it works. And then eventually the lingo of what I was teaching, because I did it so much, became easier. I did it so much that I knew the majority of the questions that were going to be asked. I knew how to answer them in Hebrew, like to the point where like most of my Hebrew was like self-defense Hebrew. because that was my Hebrew environment so much again and again. And so it does get easier the more you do it.
That's amazing. I remember going to a class with a yoga teacher who was a Spanish speaking yoga teacher and then taught us in English. And he, shout out to Alexei, said down the dog each time it was time for downward dog. And the whole class loved it so much. And then at some point, he heard one of us say something about downward dog. And he was like, wait a second. Is it downward dog? Like, I've been saying down the dog. And we were like, yes, but we love it so much. Like, we actually think we should call it down the dog now instead, just because you get to really connect with a teacher, even when it feels like a quote unquote mistake. That's, it really stuck with all of us and we loved it. So I think you're right. I think we put so much pressure on ourselves to have the right words. Yeah.
See, we put so much pressure on ourselves to get it all right. And it's just such an unrealistic standard, especially when you're teaching in a foreign language. But in any time, I think, some of that confidence just comes from not putting so much pressure to be the best, to hit a home run every single time, to, show up as your most enthusiastic self every single time. I know that when we go through certifications, we're learning a ton of material and we feel like we need to bring that into every classroom. No, you don't. What do your students want to feel by the end of the class, and focus on that and focus on connecting with them, and you'll be fine. It's going to be okay. You'll be fine.
So true. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Jane is saying, I've been teaching for 1.5 years. I notice sometimes I default to more passive cueing as to not come across as pushy. Did either of you encounter this early in teaching? I don't know.
Shannon, do you want to answer that first?
Well, I was thinking I maybe wanted to come across as more confident as a new yoga teacher. And then I realized the more invitational my language is, the more empowering it was for my students. So I would not say, I've definitely been in yoga classes where I'm like, oh my gosh, I better follow what that teacher says. Otherwise I think they're going to be angry with me. I don't thrive in that space. I have wanted to feel like I have all the answers. I get that so much. But actually, I really gravitate towards teachers who ask more questions and don't have all the answers. I don't know if that's helpful, Jane, and I'd love to hear what you would say about this, Jackie, because you teach self-defense. So I feel like, I don't know, is there a different vibe to that?
It's in most dojos and self-defense classes, you're going to get a very do this, don't do this, that, do this, don't do that kind of vibe. And that's actually not my vibe at all. I want everyone to feel empowered and safe. And so I might say something more like, that was such a good strike. That was so powerful. It would be even more powerful if you did it this way. Just language that really makes people feel good about themselves. And a lot of that, Jane, is listening to your intuition. I teach women a lot about intuition, and yoga also is a lot about intuition. You have to kind of read the room and your gut and what they need. And sometimes you can tell that if you're going to be pushy, they're going to have a little bit of an aversion. And so trust yourself.
Let us know, Jane, if that was helpful, or if there's any other questions that came up as we were kind of going through that. I love that. And I'm really impressed that you're teaching in this way. And I love how you said, people want to feel good about themselves, as they move and they try new things. I think, my kids took karate when they were younger. I feel like I didn't take it, but I was there watching all the classes. And I remember thinking this would put me into an uncomfortable place. It's doing a new thing, same as yoga. And so the more I don't want to say praise, but like that empowerment, the language that empowers people, like amazing. And how does it feel to do this? That's the language I gravitate towards for sure. So what is it? Well, tell us, like, how do you work with people now? Do you work with adults who are working to become more confident? Are you really focused on teens? Like, where is the majority of your work right now happening?
It's both. I've got an online course for women, and some women join to feel safer, and a lot of other women join because they want to be able to set unapologetic boundaries or just feel more confident. Um, and then I have one-on-one sessions going with teens. I have groups for teens. I ran a group for women. So it really is both. I enjoy both equally, and I would never let one of those go. They're both so dear to me.
That's amazing. So tell us about your online course. Can anyone take it right now? Is it ready? I've just put your website up here for our listeners who are here live. How do they access that?
The course, right now, we are finishing up our second round of it, and we will be launching soon, probably in November. So you can join the email list for updates about that. I'm also posting, obviously on my social media. So if you want to give me a follow there, you'll hear about the next launch. And it's a really beautiful space for women to feel powerful together.
I highly recommend that people follow you on social media. It's QueenRise, right? On your Instagram handle. Okay.
Instagram handle is QueenRise Power.
Oh, right. Okay. QueenRise Power. Amazing. Jane was saying, thank you. I'm not a pushy teacher at all. I want students to let the poses fit their bodies. So I invite rather than tell. And I would say, Jane, the person who wants a really bossy teacher and a really pushy teacher is just not going to be drawn to your class, and
exactly.
They can find it somewhere else. Yeah.
Exactly. Go with that. Sounds like you know how you want to teach. And when you're teaching in the way that you want to be teaching, everything flows. People love it. People are magnetized to that.
Yeah. I once went to a yoga class where a student got kicked out for not doing the right poses.
Oh my goodness.
I was like, yeah, I'm not coming back here anymore.
Right? Why do we need that?
And this brings me to a point where you said earlier, when something triggers us and we think, ugh, I really don't like this, it shows us what we're standing for. Like when we stand against this thing, like I do not want to be leading a class or in a class where someone's going to get removed. Like the person wasn't acting out. They just weren't doing the flow as fast as the teacher had wanted. And I think those are the moments where we really can take a stand for that, where we really think, oh, I don't like that. So Jane, I would say, tell people that this is what your yoga is like, for sure. Like the same way that Jackie just said, a lot of other dojos are this way and I'm not this way. I think that's amazing. Anything else that you can think of, Jackie, when we're having that day where we're like, oh my gosh, I have this big project, it can be that we need to put an email together and talk about our offering, or we have to stand in front of a room of people and teach, or jump on an interview like this. Is there anything else where you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to try this because I'm really needing some more confidence today? Or anything that
I think,
like mentally.
Yeah. I'm kind of less about, I do love that like Superman pose, some self-talk is great, but like, I'm less about like leaving it for when you're about to do something big and scary, and making self-love a practice that is just part of your life. Like making self-love something that is just the way you are. And some of the best self-love practices that I do are really just like even sitting in the mirror and hugging yourself and telling yourself that you love yourself no matter what, when you make mistakes and when you cry and when you mess up and when you get angry and when you show up and when you don't show up, and like build that unconditional love for yourself. Don't leave it for when you're about to do something scary. Like make it part of your life. That's what I would say.
Oh my gosh, I love this. I also see this modeled in your Instagram stories, and as a parent as well. I see you modeling this, which is really powerful to watch. So thank you for doing this important work. And if our listeners want to reach out to you, I'll again put your website here. And just thank you for your time today.
Yeah, I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Take care, everyone. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Thanks for being here for the live.
Bye.